It's finally been confirmed. Zandvoort is back on the Formula 1 calendar for 2020. So as of next year, the Netherlands will have its own Grand Prix, courtesy of Max Verstappen. He has been bossing it not only this year in Formula 1, but over the past few seasons, many, including myself, regard him as a future world champion, and many also argue he deserves his home Grand Prix and is the main reason we'll be heading back to the Netherlands. His legion of supporters, the Orange Army, the millions of them, of what seems it is, are at every single race. The images on screen, that's from Austria. That's not even Max Verstappen's technically home race in Belgium. He was born in Belgium but drives under a Dutch racing licence, if that makes sense. And whilst the news that we're heading back to the Netherlands isn't really a big surprise, in this video we're going to be talking and discussing the changes that need to be made and are being made to make this what is known as a Grade 1 Formula 1 circuit. Formula 1 circuits can't just be anywhere, they have to be of a particular standard. We all agree with that. That all makes sense to make sure we get not only the best racing, but safe racing and practical racing. So there's lots of changes that have been proposed today, lots of changes that have been outlined, and I want to try and just wrap that up neatly for you guys and put a little bow on top of it if I can. So that is going to be the main focus of this video. But this isn't the first time we've had a Dutch Grand Prix. This isn't the first time we have been to Zandvoort. 30 Grand Prix so far has been held at the circuit, the exact same amount as the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya, the Spanish Grand Prix we have just had, which, just to say, no news on that so far, so just keep an eye out for that, but that potentially could be being axed for next season. 19 different winners in those 30 races. Those sort of statistics are very spicy indeed, and considering we're in a period of a little bit of a domination, that could be nice, potentially, to spice up the action over the next few years. Jim Clark has the record at the moment for most wins at the track, 4 to his name. Alberto Ascari was the first ever winner at the circuit back in 1951, and our last winner at the circuit, the last time it was held in 1985, was Niki Lauda in the McLaren. However, I don't think McLaren will be winning next time out in 2020. So with the history out of the way, what changes are needed at this historic circuit to make it suitable for modern Formula 1 racing? I will do a breakdown of the circuit changes, but first, there's a few things outside of the circuit that needs to be changed, starting with the paddock. Needs a pretty big overhaul, does the paddock, to be able to fit in all the motorhome space needed, enough garage space for the teams to fit in. That is the first major point of call. You'll see in a few races' time in 2019 that the Canadian Grand Prix has been forced to have a big change to their paddock area, and of course that's one of the main parts of the circuit, so it's not going to be cheap for Zandvoort, and it's not going to be a quick transition. So considering this race, I believe, is just 8 months away, they're going to have to try and turn that around very quickly. However, I imagine with the amount of attention on this race, it's going to look sexy as hell. The next big change, on the left-hand side of your screen, in the bottom left-hand corner, you will see the only grandstand at this circuit. If a Formula 1 event is to be held at Zandvoort, there's going to have to be at least 5, maybe even 6 grandstands. The main focus for Formula 1, as all things are these days, is money, and I'm 100% sure that they would have sorted out some sort of system where there will be multiple grandstands. So that's, again, gonna cost money, gonna take time, but it isn't the biggest thing in the world, is grandstands. And of course, probably what I think could be one of the bigger challenges that Zandvoort is going to have outside of the circuit layout itself is accessibility. You can see on screen now, and you'll see in a moment's time, that because of almost the beach marshland kind of area which Zandvoort is situated, which, by the way, I think is an incredible location for a circuit, just completely different. And that's what I always say, I don't necessarily want more street tracks or purpose-built circuits, just as long as they're all a little bit different, which is what I really like about this circuit. That picture there is awesome. to see, but it's also sort of in the middle of nowhere. The camera behind you, there's a city behind, so that helps out a fair bit, but still accessibility to the circuit I imagine will need a little bit of an upgrade when it comes to Formula 1 rolling into town. But what you all want to see is the actual circuit itself. Personal opinions out the way, we'll just start there, and if you want to put your own personal opinions in the comment section below, feel free to do so. I think this is a bit of a Mickey Mouse kind of circuit, similar to Suzuka, especially the first section of Suzuka, and similar to South Korea, if some of you guys remember that circuit. Second sector and third sector. Very limited options for overtaking. You can see it's a very, very narrow track, a very high speed track. Again, you could potentially compare it to Austria. Limited options for major braking zones, so even if a car is super quick, I think dirty air, a little bit like Spain was this weekend, might play a big factor with the current regulations of cars. So I think next year's race will be a little bit dull. So what I plead Formula 1 fans to do is just give it a year. The first year might not be great, but you hope by 2021, when the new regulations have come in, then hopefully they would have sorted everything out. You might see on screen, corner names are starting to appear on the track. I'm going to have to try and break down all the changes at all these different corners, because there actually is a fairly big list. And for our first change, we're going up to the top right-hand corner to Tarzan. This is the end of the start-finish straight, and the start-finish straight itself is what's being changed here. That's being moved a little bit backwards, so what the idea intended behind this is the current grandstand in place and planned grandstands that are going to be built. It should be easier for spectators to be able to see the cars on the grid. So this particular change, more of a aesthetic kind of feel towards it rather than for pure racing itself. But what it will also mean is that there's a longer run to the first corner, so potentially more chances of an overtake. Moving around the circuit from Tarzan to Gerlach, no changes through the first sector, which I'm surprised at because there's not really any sort of overtaking spot. You then go down this fairly flat out section through to Shellvac, I'm going to call that. That is very wrong, but also no changes here. Also still very limited opportunities, but you can see how most of the lap will be full throttle. Masters potentially could be a naughty little overtaking spot there, but again we go through this second sector, and it's not until we get into the third sector at the top of the screen there, Hans Ernst, where we're seeing our first real change. This is it a little bit closer up, and what is happening here is the drivers will be coming down from the top right hand there, going right, and then the long left-hander. Well, that long left-hander is what's being changed. It's being shortened so that it's going to more feel like a potential chicane, if you want to call it that. The idea behind this is that it's a very limited overtaking spot already, and potentially this will speed up the driving a little bit so you don't have a really slow speed section where not much is happening. And just out of Hans Ernst, you go into the final two corners. Also with a really difficult to pronounce name, so I'm just going to call it Ari. But what's happening here is they're going to try and make it they're changing the corner slightly, giving it a bit of an embankment, so then the drivers will be able to go completely flat out through the corner, potentially setting up a DRS section a little bit earlier on, which for some fans will be alarming that they're trying to build these circuits with DRS in mind, because what that does is suggests that Formula 1 2021 rules seem to have DRS in mind. I'm not a big hater of DRS, to be honest with you. I'm really not, but I know for some fans that won't be too healthy. So I just wanted to point that out to you guys. But at the moment, that's everything, which again seems a little bit strange because of the circuit's nature already. Seems to me like a fitting replacement for Spain, because both don't really create the best races and can sometimes be a bit of a procession. I haven't seen any racing at Zandvoort, or what I have seen has been just clips and nothing really substantial is what I will say. So I can't really judge too much, and the real fact is we're going to have to wait till next season to see what this race really brings. We know Verstappen is the key reason we are going here, but I also hope racing will be awesome. It's been a difficult start to the year with Formula 1, so a little bit of news like this, I think, has whetted some people's appetite, if you want to call it that. I'm rambling. I don't want to ramble, but I'd love to know what you think of Formula 1 returning to Zandvoort. Do you think it's a circuit that we really need, that you're really looking forward to seeing, or would you rather Formula 1 focuses on circuits like Interlagos, which might potentially be going at the end of this year? That would be a huge loss for Formula 1. But in saying that, this circuit at Zandvoort, the layout, the style, is similar to Interlagos. So maybe this circuit, I'm being too harsh on it. Anyway, let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.